get money and publicity, and Bailey is a professional academic troll. It's the best way to understand it. And his trolling template was the bestseller from 1994, The Bell Curve, which was about the science of racial differences in intelligence. He's on a mailing list with a bunch of the people who are involved in that book, and they're always helping each other defend their own works. Janice Raymond's transphobic troll, The Transsexual Empire, which we talked about, epitomizes an unanswered troll that took decades to undo. See, academic trolls can't lose because no response implies approval, and any objection, however mild, becomes evidence that they're right. In 2003, Bailey called a mild rebuke from biologist Joan Roughgarden insulting and scathing and characterized it as a screed. Now, I'm not an academic, so by framing my non-academic response as a counter-troll, I deliberately shifted the entire extreme edge of the debate to the moderate center. So by being extreme myself, I was able to shift everything significantly into a different paradigm. Because, you know, as a non-academic, I have no interest whatsoever in having a scientific debate about this book, no interest whatsoever in a civil debate about this book. That's one of the ways that these academic trolls try to control the debate. Academics tend to be very thin-skinned and self-important, so they're actually pretty easy to troll. And a good key to trolling them is to get them to do what you want with, well, they think that it's their idea. And Bailey and I are both public figures, so pretty much anything that's said about us is fair comment. You know, I'm a big girl. I don't care what people want to say about me. I just wanted to echo Bailey's disrespect. That was my goal with all of this, was to bring consequence to his actions, since no academic consequence was obviously going to be expected. I made it very clear that this was the tipping point. This was the defining moment in our history, the day that we said, this is not going to happen anymore. Now, populist uprisings always use new media to great effect. The means and production and distribution of knowledge is no longer controlled by elites. Lynn Conway's online investigation, My Clearinghouse, each had hundreds of contributors that gave us thousands of items. I mean, it was, when we were getting stuff coming in 2003 and 2004, it was all we could do just to put it up as it came in. It was so much information. And the incident really united the trans community as never before. It's already been written about as a historically significant event in history books. Academics who are attempting a feeble backlash against the Bailey backlash really just don't see it yet, but they're on the wrong side of history. I want to talk a little bit about reproduction and eugenics, because that's where all this really goes to. Freudian psychology is being supplanted right now in the field by what Nancy Ordover calls the biopsych merge in her book American Eugenics, which I think everybody should read. Sociobiology, behavior genetics, evolutionary psychology, all of these fields try to graft science onto social constructions, like social Darwinism and eugenics before them. In Bailey's evolutionary psychology, this is a quote, homosexuality might be the most striking unresolved paradox of human evolution, because he believes the number of healthy offspring one leaves is perhaps the best indicator of evolutionary success. Now, Bailey frames his book within this essential discourse, where homosexuality is, quote, maladaptive in terms of evolution. Now, most people see race science as hopelessly biased pseudoscience, but they don't see sex science and race science as the same thing yet. In fact, a lot of LGBT people have faith that their political salvation lies in sex science. Now, the problem is, you know, anybody who's labeled distinct, disordered, and diseased, especially by the state, end up having problems down the road. It's just a historic fact. So this whole idea that, you know, science is going to save us from the sin and the lifestyle choice arguments, really, you have to ask, at what cost is that going to happen? This controversy really boils down to reproduction, specifically natural selection. Essentially, and in every sense of that word, this controversy is about the eugenic ideology of the unfit. Gender identity disorder, which we've all been diagnosed with, or disorders of sex development, the latest term that they're trying to impose on the intersex community, are eugenic heterosexism. Bailey thinks homosexuality may represent a developmental error. Blanchard thinks non-homosexual transsexualism is a paraphilic defect in a man's sexual learning that echoes his mentor Freud's ideas of courtship disorders, which is what they think this is all about. The order to which they ascribe, if they're talking about disorders, the order that they're really talking about asserts that the purpose or function of life is to make more life, or more specifically, better life, like eugenics. The good genes are going to get put forward. Now, conservatives hate that populist phrase, "it takes a village to raise a child." It takes a family to raise a child, they counter. Now, Zucker blames childhood gender identity disorder on poor family dynamics and, quote, maternal psychopathology. So it's a blame the mother game once again. You know, it's like they've just repositioned it as a new kind of science. Bailey, Lawrence, and Draeger obliquely assert their worth or fitness is evidenced by being breeding organisms. Bailey talks about screening and aborting gay fetuses as a parental right. And that's really the thing that I want to get to here, is that the next wave of eugenics is going to occur in utero. We're looking at something that's about to happen with this parental rights movement that I call distributed eugenics. It's the idea that the individual's rights are, you know, more important than what's causing them to make these decisions. Now, one way to stop distributed eugenics is through populism. You know, if we can get to where regular people understand that individual choices affect the whole population and vice versa, we can really start to fight this. But this is a serious problem that we all need to start thinking about. That's where the next wave of eugenics is coming from. It's going to be in the womb. It's going to be these screening for traits that are disorders and diseases. As a conclusion, Bailey's book is a self-aggrandizing exercise in identity politics. He claims he's a science, but it is identity politics, where he's a heroic scientist who's curing gender-variant children and speaking the scientific truth in the face of hysterical activists whose identity politics and narcissistic rage drive their efforts to ruin him. Bailey outlines transsexuals' common lies and deceptiveness and explains away those who take issues with his claims as inept, mentally disordered, or lying. But that's not the real story. Essentially, Bailey's book is an argument that he's a single heterosexual man. He throws around the phrase gay, straight, or lying because he hates sexologist John Money's book, Gay, Straight, and In Between. By replacing in between with lying, Bailey erases his bisexual and trans critics and extols his open and honest supporters of the male essence narrative, meaning that trans women are really men. Yet Bailey isn't open and honest about his own sexual interests. He said, quote, "Everything that I'm willing to say about my personal life, I've already said. For more on this hypocrisy, you can read my essay, Gay, Straight, or Bailey." Bailey's only attracted to homosexual transsexuals who are naturally effeminate. And he says, if a gay man wants to attract straight men, he should imitate a woman. Blanchard appeals to Bailey because trans fans like Bailey are not gay, but more like, quote, scrambled up heterosexual men. Blanchard's taxonomy, and thus the Bailey book, also affirms their supporter Anne Lawrence's self-identity as a real transsexual, because under other schemes, Anne would be considered a non-transsexual. Bailey, Blanchard, and Lawrence are locked in one of those feedback loops I was talking about of personal validation, where personal and professional validation keep building them up and they just get further afield with their ideology. Now, in my opinion, Bailey's fraud extends beyond the marketing of this controversy as science. I think Bailey's Ryan family, the child that he cures, is a little too perfect. It embodies every element that Bailey needed in his book to refute opponents, all in one convenient family. This mother who's tried all the other kinds of therapies first, this gay uncle so that he could talk about those theories. It's just all just a little too convenient. Danny Ryan would be an adult now, so I'm sure that some disinterested party will soon independently determine if Danny actually exists. I guess just in the end, I just want to point out that this populist response to Bailey's controversy, I think, really started something that I don't think is going to ever stop, and it really was a historically significant event. It still amazes me daily, like the strength that our community's drawn from this setback, and it evokes a passage from Maya Angelou that I first read in Les Feinberg's Transgender Warriors when I was first awakening myself politically, so I thought I'd read it. "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise.